Well, we've heard a lot today about fiction, but Authoring Me is also involved in the publication of non-fiction. And as you've seen, today's the launch of Rahul Verma's book, By Choice, Not By Chance, which has at its core the subject of addiction, or specifically, Rahul, your addiction. So I want to begin by asking you why you wrote this book and why specifically now.
Namaskaram, everyone. Well, this book came into being just on the back of a very casual conversation that I was having one day with one of my friends who happened to be quite familiar with my story, with my life, and he casually mentioned, Rahul, you know what? You have been given many chances in life, so you should write a book about all the chances that you have got in life. And over the next few days, I started thinking about those chances that he had mentioned in particular. The gentleman's actually sitting in the audience at the minute. But yeah, so I just started thinking about them, and I came to a realization, and I discussed it with my wife, Chandni, that if I were to write a book about my journey, then would it be about the chances that I got? Or would it be about the choices that I made? Sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes compulsively. And hence this book then happened as a direct result of that.
You're very honest about yourself in writing this book, and obviously you have to be, or the reader would see right through you. But how would you describe the process of opening up as you do, knowing that people are going to read about very personal parts of your life and very difficult parts of your life, times when you were really struggling?
Well, it wasn't very difficult for me, to be honest, because I have evolved from what I was a few years ago into somebody where I realize what my place is in this planet really is. And my teacher, my guru, who have been quite, I've described quite a lot in the book. I've given a lot of text about it. Basically, helped me understand that in the vast cosmos, we as humans, or I as a human, have got a very minuscule presence. So opening up my life has actually got not much meaning or life in general. My story is one of the very small stories that is available, that is out there. But to come out with that story, there was never any sort of fear or any shame or anything like that, because I had already come to a realization that I'm no longer what I was in my head. I'm just another human being, and I completely am aware of my life in correspondence to the life around in the whole cosmos, which is very tiny little speck, in comparison.
So the book begins when you're at a very low point in your life, and it's a very gritty book, it's a very gritty story, but there's a very strong element of hope and positivity throughout the book, isn't there? Are you hoping that that's what readers will take from this, or have you got a sort of readership in mind? Who do you think is likely to want to read your book?
So throughout my life, over a period of time, especially in the last few years, I have realized, that all the choices that I have made in life were largely, like I just previously mentioned, were largely out of compulsive or conscious behaviors, largely compulsive behaviors. So my audience, or my target audience for this book, is anyone and everyone who can correlate their own choices as compulsive behaviors, and how to then move on from becoming or acting compulsively to acting consciously, effectively. That's who I'm targeting for. So it's not one particular age group it's anyone who can read through it and then realize that some of their or most of their compulsive behaviors can actually be converted, transformed into conscious behaviors, and you can move from reaction to response quite quickly from there.
So you're hoping it will speak to a lot of people, what you have been through?
Definitely.
So can you give us some idea of what was some of the most challenging and also some of the most rewarding aspects of writing the book?
Actually, both of them were exactly the same, to be honest. So the most challenging and the most rewarding was to go through back in time a little bit and relive some of those moments when writing some of those chapters in the book, along with Chandni. And this time, we were looking at it from a very different lens, and we were not at all reactive to the situations that had happened, but we were thinking about it and more responsive to how it had happened, and how in today's life, if those situations would have come again in whatever shape or form, then what would my response or our response collectively would be on that. So that's what, it kind of was challenging a little bit, and as well as very beautiful emotion or beautiful experience that both of us kind of had.
So you'd obviously moved on quite a lot from your low point to the point when you started writing the book. But were there still things you learned about yourself during the writing process?
Yes, definitely. Throughout the writing process, and throughout the last 4 or 5 years, every morning, every day when I am doing my chores, and especially when I'm listening to my guru, Sadhguru, there has been a constant involvement in my thinking, in my journey in life in general. And one particular thing that kind of stands out from there, like I said, previously also, was how to kind of not to react, instead to respond, be responsible towards everything and everyone in life, and we tend to live in our own minds, actually. If we were to just take a little bit step away from our mind and our physical self, we will realize very soon that there is so much more to it, and that is so beautiful, actually.
You talk about react and respond. Can you just go into that a little bit more? I think react is much more of a, well, no, you say, what in essence is the difference between reacting and responding?
Well, reacting, as the word says, you are basically reacting or acting against a particular situation. Response is basically your ability to respond is your responsibility. So my ability to respond to situation is limitless. I don't have to take any action against any, or in favor, or in against for any particular situation. I can always respond to it. So reactiveness, from reactiveness to responsiveness is the evolution in me that has happened over a period. Previously, I used to react to every situation compulsively. Now, instead of compulsive reaction, I have now moved on to a conscious, responsive behavior.
Was writing the book a cathartic process for you?
Yes, in a way, it was. It was definitely. It was quite beautiful.
So you've mentioned Sadhguru, and who's obviously very important in your life, and his teachings come through in your book, and there are lots of anecdotes and sort of stories that you mentioned that you relate to him. But I believe it was a friend who put you onto Sadhguru, was it?
Yes, one of my friends was visiting from India, and he's a very calm and composed person. He's been a presence in my life on and off since my university days. So intellectually he's very, very good, and very, very calm and composed. So it was just a very casual conversation that he was visiting us in the UK. He was staying with us for a couple of days, and we were just sitting there and just browsing YouTube, and we just happened to come across one of those videos with Sadhguru. And he said, I have listened to Sadhguru a number of times, and you know what, his method, his way of talking really resonates with me. I was intrigued. I was, okay, what is this all about? So he left the next 2 to 3 days. It was a December period. So I just started browsing on the YouTube, and the more I heard Sadhguru and all the sessions that were available on the YouTube, I pretty much have gone through all of them. I started quickly resonating with all the experience that I've had in my life and how I have reacted to those situations. And his way of explaining things is so simple that it kind of I was just able to absorb them straight away. And it's mentioned in the book that I used to spend a lot of time walking in the woods, in the forest behind my house, along with my dog. And all those few hours of walking every day, I would just put on a headset and just listen to hours and hours of Sadhguru and talking about various aspects of life, and just resonating them within myself as to what I was doing in those situations, how I was behaving in those situations, and how I could gradually move away from those situations into a different behaviors and patterns.
Now, your wife Chandni, who's here today, plays a big part in your life. What role did she have in either deciding to write this book or in the actual writing process?
So when I started to kind of think about it, and it was just a casual thought in my head. It wasn't that I am going to write a book or anything. It was just a more of a challenge, that I was having in my own mind, whether should I be writing about chances or should I be writing about choices, like I said. So I just, when I came back home after mulling on this idea for about 2 to 3 days, I just came back and had a very, very casual conversation with Chandni, recollecting that evening, and she simply said, "Well, I think you must write that book." I said, "No, I was just, this is just a thought, that if I were to ever write a book, would it be about choices or would it be about chances?" And she said, "Of course, it will all be about the choices that we have collectively made. And definitely you should write that book." And then she got in touch with Monica and Ekta about, they have been our friends for quite a number of years. And we just casually discussed as to what is the process of writing a book. And they helped us through that process quite quickly. And this entire journey of writing the book happened quite quickly, as you are very well aware of it, Sandra. It literally took us less than 3 months from the thought to ready to be published version of that book. So if it wasn't for Chandni encouraging me in that, or slightly pushing me, it wouldn't have happened, basically.
But you kept it a secret from anybody else?
Yes, so it was only the 4 members in my family, my immediate family, my children and Chandni were the only people who were aware of this initially, right up to the point where my editor actually pointed out that you have mentioned quite a few people in this book, and you should actually ask them whether they would be happy to be part of this book or not. So up until that point in time, we hadn't had given thought about coming out until it was ready to be published.
Yeah.
But when you asked in particular that have you actually spoken to all the people that you have mentioned in the book, it would be a good idea to get their opinion about it. So that's when I started coming out and asking some of those people that have been actively mentioned in the book about their, approaching them to say, I'm writing this thing and I have mentioned you sometimes in very much in detail, and are you okay with it in the first place?
Thank goodness they were.
Yes, they all were.
Delete it out.
They all were.
So do you have any advice for anyone who wants to write either a memoir or sort of a story about their life or a life-changing situation that they've been through?
So, not anybody who's writing a story as such or any memoir, but in general, people, especially who have been going through various forms of addiction, as Sadhguru says, some tries to find in the wine, some tries to find it in divine. Nonetheless, people are looking for the same thing, which is joyfulness, effectively. So if you are looking to start, or if you are looking for joyfulness in your life, which actually you are, there's no doubt about it, there's no other 2 ways about it, and the moment you realize that, that's when your evolutionary, your transformation starts. And after that, it's just a matter of your putting yourself into doing that activity and coming out, and there is no shame. I've a lot of people have told me, it's a very brave thing you have done. You've written about your addictions. You've written out how sometimes very shamelessly you have acted or reacted into particular situations. And I've always turned around and said, you know what? If you are an addict, the first thing you must accept is that you are a very, very shameless person. Because the moment you are an addict, you will go down to any level to facilitate your addiction. So if you are really that shameless and if you realize that, then what's the shame in writing about it?
Yeah, yeah.
And telling it to other people.
And as you say, honesty, you cannot write a book like this without being honest.
Yes.
Because it just wouldn't fulfil anything. It wouldn't satisfy you, and it certainly wouldn't satisfy the reader. So is there going to be a follow-up volume?
We'll see. I haven't really thought anything about it. This was just something that I really wanted to write, and I wanted to dedicate it to Sadhguru and to the Isha Foundation. And that's all my intention was, you know. I could get even 1 or 2 people in the world who are struggling with addiction to kind of give them an idea that there are many, many ways forward out of it. And then even when you are come out of your addiction, you still have that tendency to fall back into it.
Yeah.
So how do you sustain it? And there are tools and technologies available today to kind of provide that sustenance. So if anybody and everybody who reads that book and are able to move from compulsive behavior to conscious behavior, I think my job is done.
Yeah, we talked, didn't we? You know, if you have an addictive personality, you will always have an addictive personality.
Yes.
That's not going to go away. It's the way you deal with it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
From compulsive to consciousness.
Yeah, yeah.
From
Rahul,
spirits to spirituality, as it is.
Yes, yes. It was a real privilege for me personally, and I know the rest of the Author in Me team, to collaborate with you on this book. And I wish you huge success with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Much
Thank you.
So thank you very much for that. We are Author in Me publish stories that push boundaries, inspire others and bring a positive change and import a life lesson. You can order this book and the previous book, Captain of Legends, on authorinme.com. All the process of this book will go to the Isha Foundation, who are here with us today. Rahul and Avanti, thank you very much for your support. And you can also meet the author after the session, and this book will be available across India in February. If we'd just like to call Monica, Etka and Chandri to come up. There you are. Just to come up and join us on stage to reveal the book cover. Yeah.